Marylou Zuzarte, it's been a pleasure meeting you and to learn about your interest in photography. Tell us a bit about that, how it came about.
Thank you for interviewing me, Frederick. It started with the fact that I was born in Africa, and although my parents originated from India, our influence and our exposure to the Goan culture was very limited. We had celebrated a few of the Goan feasts, but my mother and father were really never into the true Goan culinary aspects of Goa. And as I grew up and eventually visited India, I got interested in the Goan, especially the Goan food.
When was the first time?
The first time was when my children were very young. My youngest son was 6 years old.
I see.
And it was there that I felt that I was at ease here in the state of Goa, which made me, and the state, I mean, when you're raising your children, you don't have much time to travel, you don't have much time to think about what you like to do. So as the kids grew older and I gave up my job as a scientist, I decided, I had been doing photography for a long time, and I decided, it took me 2 years actually to think about this project, that I wanted to connect with the traditional Goan food and especially the women involved in the food, in the preparation of the food, but also the character of the woman. So last year when I first came, I settled in Goa and spent 3 months at a guest house there. At the beginning, contact was very difficult. I think people were more suspicious of me being non-Goan because they'd ask me, "Are you Goan?" And I said, "Yes, of course I am." A couple of people asked me, are you Indian? Which was surprising. It was very surprising for me. Anyway, these 3 months was not very productive, but I started into the project. I had an idea what I had wanted to photograph. And I came home back to Germany and realized that I basically was struggling with being exposed to my culture and not knowing what to do with the pictures. The first thought was to make a book. And I thought the only people who are going to read this book are the Goans. And publishing books is expensive. So I sat with this idea for about a year until I met an Australian artist, Natasha Stelmach, who had filmed and photographed in Goa. And when I started to tell her about the project, she got very excited. She herself is of German origin and had moved to Australia. But when she was old enough, she decided to return to Germany to discover her roots and to understand her culture. And she caught on with this idea instantly. And she said, "This is great." She said, "It's not about just Goan culture, it's about any culture moving away from their homeland and missing the sights, sounds, and smells that are familiar." And when I started to talk to people from this aspect point of view, and you find foreigners all over the place where they are, or immigrants who have been years and years away from their country, and you start to talk about certain things, they say, "Ah, yes, I remember that. I remember my mum used to make that, and we used to eat that, but I don't make it anymore." And I found this concept had applied to every culture. So when I came back to Goa this year, spent 3 months, and this time I stayed longer into the mango season. I wanted to really understand and photograph the mango season. I came back to Kolva, and the most amazing thing when I actually got out of the taxis, I found people greeting me and recognizing me.
I see.
And this was the first realization, okay, I think I'm on my way to photographing more women and being able to photograph them with ease, because there is a slight superstition that if you come to photograph me in my kitchen, you're coming to copy my recipes, right? Which I always said, no, I'm not coming to copy your recipes. I'm coming to talk about you, and I'm coming to photograph you. Which for them was you get a smile on their face.
They cannot understand the concept, but
Yeah.
you are looking at the people behind the food.
Yes, and especially the women who invariably they'll start talking about their life, about how it used to be with the family, about what my mother used to do. So they enjoy that somebody has asked them about their life. It's not just about their household or what their duties have to be. It's about what they were like when they were children, when they were young mothers, when they just got married. And they love to talk about that. They feel proud of it. And a lot of these women are quite in charge of themselves. They have a very independent, I'll say most of the women that I photographed um, had a very independent outlook. I was very surprised. The men, their husbands had either passed away or they had retired and decided that they were going to sit in the shade of a coconut tree or mango tree and continue to sip on their feni. But the women were the ones who continued to work.
There are a lot of women-headed families, and
Yes.
the women take in Goa in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But what would your pictures look like, Marylou? I mean, typically.
What I aim for a lot is to capture the expression of the woman when she's concentrated on, for instance, when she's grinding her masalas, when she's smelling the food as it cooks, or when she's checking on it. So it's a lot about her expressions. And a lot of times when I'll show them the pictures, they have the smile and say, "Oh, I didn't realize I looked like that."
I see.
And it's nice to show them because they don't often have pictures of themselves. So when I came this time, I had printed out a few of the pictures from last year's project, and I visited all these ladies again, and I gave them each picture, and they felt really, really proud. And I felt good that I was able to please them in that way, to give back.
Is it tough to photograph Goan Indian food because of the colors, which are mostly muddy brown or?
No, not at all. Not at all. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of color in the preparation of the food, in the tomatoes, the onions, the coriander, the color of the turmeric, the color of the fish going into the curry, the clay pots, beautiful, beautiful colors. Beautiful colors. And it's in a dark surrounding, maybe of an old kitchen that's where wood fires are being used. These scenes are just gorgeous. They're just beautiful. Yeah.
A little bit about your work in the sciences.
I graduated in the sciences of human medicine, and I've worked in research for the last 20 years in human medicine research in the United States and in Germany. And found out that basically as a woman, it's difficult to come up in a career because you spend a lot of time. One is you spend a lot of time in the lab, a lot of time writing papers, but at the same time you have to contribute some time to raising your kids. So my husband and I, we're both researchers, we're both scientists, decided that one of us is going to make it in a career, the other one is to hold back in order to be prepared to raise the kids, the children. And that's what I did. But eventually I thought, okay, working 10 hours a day and weekends, this is no life at all. I need to see the world as well. Yeah.
And about your famous uncle Joseph Murumbi. I was surprised to, you're the first relation of Joseph Murumbi. We've heard so much about him.
Yes.
He was the vice president of Kenya for a short
That's
while.
correct. Yeah.
And a great collector of the arts.
Very much so.
And spent a lot of time in India as a student. Not always happy, but tough times.
Yes, he had a tough.
Tell us.
I remember Uncle Joseph coming to our house in Uganda for dinner. It was mostly for dinner because when he was on his travels as a politician, he'd come with his driver.
60s?
That was in the 60s, 70s. 70s. Oh, yeah, late 60s, early 70s. He was a very humble, very quiet man. He was very polite, very
intelligent.
Very intelligent. I mean, at the beginning, I as a child, when I remember him first coming, my mum said, "That's Uncle Joseph who's going to visit us."
Yeah.
And I'm sure my mum and dad had talked about him before. I remember just him coming to dinner in Uganda, in Kampala. later, when we moved to Nairobi, of course, my father's relationship to him intensified, because then they were in Nairobi, and Uncle Joseph had a farm that my family used to go and spend weekends.
Out of Nairobi?
It was out of Nairobi, and he and his wife Sheila used to have this farm.
Where his library was?
Sorry?
Where his library was?
Yes, and his
the huge library of art, the
yes,
collection of art.
And his collection of masks. I remember, and I have a passion to collect masks.
Really?
Too. I didn't know that Uncle Joseph was collecting masks.
Really?
I remember walking into his house and seeing these masks, because the tribal features and the masks that are carved, for me as a photographer, and I've always liked to stare. I stare at people, not because I've got some strange behavior, but I like to watch the muscle reactions on people's faces. And I like to see their intonations in their faces and in their eyes. And this is what I brought into my photography as well. And these masks were a beautiful example of these features of the Maasai, Kikuyu, different tribes. And Uncle Joseph had this collection that was just amazing. He had a passion for the arts and for the history of Kenya. Very much was very much involved in keeping peace as far as politics was concerned.
Of course, while Goans claim to be very global, his is one of the few cases where, he was the son of a marriage between Goan and Maasai in that sense, or Goan and African.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also unusual, and he really grew to a lot of prominence eventually. As a politician, as an individual.
You have to remember in those days, one, the marriage was very rare, and secondly, when you do produce a child who's half black, half Indian, Goan or half brown, it's not looked upon kindly, especially in the Indian community. So he was sent off to school here in Bombay.
Belgaum?
Yeah, and then later worked here.
Yeah.
Till he hadn't seen his mother since he had been sent off to India, and he'd missed her very much, but then he'd also heard that she had died, so he'd never seen her after that. So he returned to Kenya, and I think I could imagine that after I've lived here in India on and off, that people are sensitive to the skin color of black.
Yeah.
So I can imagine it wasn't easy for him. And when he came back to Kenya, it was still talked about. I still heard from people that, oh, you're a Zuzarte daughter. Your grandmother's the infamous Mrs. Zuzarte. And yes, you have a black uncle.
I see.
And for us, it was, why do you say these things?
I see.
And then when he became famous, it was, oh, all of a sudden we have this famous Goan who's
vice
famous,
president.
And we had blank responses to that. Yeah.
Strange. Yeah, I mean, that also says something about the community as a whole.
Yeah.
And the times
the intolerance of mixed race, which is now going on all over the world. I think it has been and will be. There are, I think, in Africa and India, there are intolerances to.
That's true.
Even
we all have a degree of racism in us, regardless of our skin color.
That's correct.
So I mean,
correct.
It's not that we are immune to it. But all the best with your project. I hope you
thank you much.
Get a chance to speak about it in Goa, because it's so interesting.
Definitely.
And display some of the pictures and tell us the story behind the pictures at some stage.
Yes, I will. What we plan to do is make a sort of installation. So it'll be a mixture of pictures, sights and sounds. And then I have this other artist that I will collaborate with, and he makes patterns and music that he will display onto the. I just sent back a shipment of Goan pots.
Wow. That
I will work on when I get back.
Will they get back in one piece?
I hope so. I packed them myself.
Wow.
But yes, when I get back now in a few weeks, it'll be work until we've hopefully introduce our first installation to the Indian Embassy in Berlin.
Wow.
And we hope to then send it through the other embassies, but I will definitely return to Goa to present my work to the people.
The work you're doing is very important, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Frederick.